Hey there everybody, I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, a YouTube channel dedicated to tabletop board gaming. And today I have a special treat for you, another in my top 10 series of videos. Today, my top 10 favorite two-player games. In this video, I'll be covering some of my favorite two-player games. Some of these are specifically for two players. Some of them are games that I just enjoy a little better at the two-player count, and I'll be sure to tell you why as I get into each game. Now, my wife and I did do a video a few months ago about our favorite games for couples, and we covered a list of 10 games in that video that we especially like to play with each other. Now, these games that you're going to see might be a little bit more competitive, maybe a little more cutthroat, or they might just be themes outside of her area of interest, but either way, this is a unique list of games to that list, so let's go ahead and kick it off. Number 10 on this list is probably the lightest and definitely the cutest game on this list by far. This is the Boop series I have here, specifically the original Boop game and the Boop the Halls Christmas edition. I do not have the Thanksgiving version. I never really got around to getting it. But Boop is a very light two-player tactical sort of skirmish game where you're placing these kittens and or cat tokens onto a 6x6 grid in the original game and sort of a 5x5 to 7x7 grid on a literally three-dimensional Christmas tree in Boop the Halls. The idea is that you're trying to get 3 kittens into a row, which lets one of them grow into a cat, and eventually you're trying to get 3 cats in a row to win the game, or you can simply get all of your cats on the board to also win the game. It's very deceptive though, because as you're placing those kittens, they will sort of spook other kittens out of the way. They'll boop them, if you will, out of the way. Cats will also boop kittens, but kittens can't boop cats because they're way too mature for that kind of nonsense. And so this whole game is trying to find just the right placement to get your kittens in a line, as they can even boop your own kittens. So you're trying to be very clever in how you arrange things, and of course, all while your player, or your opponent, I should say, is also trying to boop your cats or kittens out of the way to stop you from getting those, those 3 in a row setups in place. A very fun game, but definitely something that you can sink your teeth into if you really start to get involved in the strategies and start to see the options that are available to you. It can get quite thinky, quite tactical, even a little bit mean, and definitely a lot of fun. Boop, my number 10. Number 9 on this list is a somewhat recent addition. I got this game not too long ago. I've already gotten to play it a couple times at 2. This is Wondrous Creatures by Bad Comet Games. This is a blend of worker placement and engine building mechanisms. It's a little similar in nature to the game of Everdell, but does stand on its own, I think, fairly well. In this game, you have a hexagonal map, sort of a hexagonal grid map, I should say, between the players, a number of trophies on them, a couple of achievements to work towards, and you're placing these workers on that grid of spaces. Your workers take up 2 spaces, so you can actually grab a couple different resources around each of your workers, and you can be using those those resources, I should say, to play cards into a tableau. There's a variety of different cards in the game, each with unique effects. You have instantaneous effects, you have sort of continuous effects that can trigger throughout the game, you have endgame scoring cards, you have these energy cards which get little tokens on them that you can spend for very unique, usually powerful abilities, but only a couple times throughout the game. And then you have recharge cards, and those recharge cards are activated every time you would pick all of your workers back up off the board. I like this game uniquely, especially from Everdell, for the fact that in Everdell, you're trying to use your workers for a lot of different things, and especially towards the end of the game, if you're trying to use those workers just to get resources, you're often going to feel like you're sort of falling behind the curve. In this game, pretty much all your workers are grabbing resources for you, and while you may generate an engine throughout the game that helps you get more resources, you don't really feel like you're under the gun if you're still getting resources from your workers later in the game. I also do like this achievement aspect. They kind of fire off a little bit more automatically than they do in the game of Everdell, and I like the game especially at 2 because it's just fairly snappy. You're able to get to your next turn fairly quick. The market as it is, the market of cards that you're drafting from already cycles out quite quickly, so you don't feel like the market gets stagnant, the cards sit around too long. In fact, oftentimes they're wiping when you have a couple cards out there that you still really want. So the speed of the game is pretty quick at 2. Your options are still pretty good at 2. It just feels like a good thinky game, a little bit of a multiplayer solo experience, if I'm honest, at 2. But I do like the theme. I like the table presence of this game quite a bit, and it's just a lot of fun. Number 9, Wondrous Creatures. Number 8 on this list is something of a unique double feature, if you will, because these are 2 games from different publishers, different designers, but they play very similar to each other. The first is Air, Land, and Sea by Arcane Wonders, and the second is Compile by Greater Than Games, which of course is now defunct, but you are still able to get this game. In fact, the second version just came out at Gen Con 2025. Anyways, these are card-playing games for only 2 players, and in each of these games, you're going to have 3 sort of theaters or columns of these cards that you're going to be playing your cards into. So in Air, Land, and Sea, you have literally air, land, and sea, these sort of 3 theaters of combat. In Compile, you are competing AIs, and you're trying to compile code in 3 different algorithms, if you will, and there is a large variety of algorithms in this box and in the second edition, so you've got a lot of different diversity in this game specifically. But both of these games are letting you play cards. You can only play those cards into their appropriate theater, in Air, Land, and Sea, or in the 3 algorithms that you're working towards. However, you can play cards face up into their appropriate column, or you can play them face down into any column you want, and then use various features on these cards to possibly flip those cards over. So if a card is already in the wrong space, but face down and then flips up, that becomes a legal play. In both of these games, you've got this very clever tactical card play. You're affecting the cards of your other players. You're trying to get into the lead. You're trying to get the majority of value of these cards into all of those columns. In Compile, you're trying to do that to then flip over your cards and sort of compile them. In Air, Land, and Sea, you're just trying to win the conflict in those 3 theaters of war. The end game between the 2 is a little bit unique. You're going to play multiple rounds of Air, Land, and Sea, sort of gaining points as you play. In Compile, it's simply a race to be the first to flip over your 3 algorithms in front of you. But while again they're different games and sort of the outset, they are very similar in the way that they play. I think Air, Land, and Sea is a little bit more approachable. Compile can be a little bit weird if nothing else, and there is, I think, even more take that in this game. But both are just clever and unique systems, and I really enjoy sinking your teeth into what seems like honestly a relatively simple concept, just trying to play these cards out, trying to win these 3 columns in either game, but they can really be thinky. They can be a little swingy sometimes, just in the way that your opponents and you, of course, are playing your cards. Anyways, fun, thinky games, Air, Land, and Sea, and Compile. Take your pick. My number 8. With number 7, I'm going to have to let my nerd energy flow, and I'll also apologize. This game is fairly hard to come by these days. This is Star Trek Fleet Captains by WizKids. It is a long since out-of-print game. You can still find copies here and there online, but this is a 2-player only, although there is a variant, I think, that lets you play up to 3 if you get one of the expansions. But it is a 2-player game set, obviously, well into the Star Trek universe. In this game, you will control one of the factions. The base game here is the Federation and the Klingons. You can get a Romulan expansion and a Dominion expansion from the Deep Space Nine series. But you are going to start off with a fleet of ships. The capabilities of those ships will then determine what missions you're drawing from these unique decks of mission cards. Some of them can be combat in nature, some of them are exploration in nature, some of them are trying to get sort of unique situations set up within the game to then be able to score those missions. And in that sense, it is a simple race to a endgame score between the 2 players, but of course, you can butt heads a little bit. You can get involved in some combat, maybe find other ways to thwart the efforts of your opponent while you may not know exactly what missions they are trying to do. I really enjoy that it feels very immersive into that Star Trek universe. You've got the ability to cloak. You've got the ability to move energy between the various systems of weapons, shields, movement, etc. And that feels very, real to the show. The factions do feel like they are, again, unique to what those factions do in the series. So the Federation ships are usually about exploration, trying to get various science, maybe experiments or research done, while the Klingons are trying to fight. They're trying to, throw their muscle around and prove their worth in battle. A great game. Again, like I said, a little difficult to come by. Its table presence also isn't absolutely fantastic. WizKids are not known for fantastic component quality, but they do make it up with some really nice miniatures, and again, just a very genuine feel to the canon of Star Trek. That's why it's my number 7, Fleet Captains. Number 6 is another space game, which is probably a good time for me to remind folks that I'm a big fan of space games, but that's okay because this is New Frontiers, a Race for the Galaxy board game. Now, New Frontiers, like Race for the Galaxy, can play at multiple players. This one can actually go up to 5 players. I do like it a bit at 2 because you're going to actually get 2 placements on the player track. So you're actually going to get to activate yourself twice within each round. And so again, turns are kind of snappy. You get a lot of player agency in this. Now, it is a game just like Race for the Galaxy where on your turn, you're going to pick an action. You'll get a more powerful version of that action, while your opponent or opponents gets a slightly weaker version of that action. But again, you have double the actions that you get to pick in a 2-player game, and so it feels very quick, and you get to trigger 2 of those actions at the more powerful ability, which again just kind of feels like you're getting a lot more done on each one of your turns. Like Race for the Galaxy, it is a game where you're trying to colonize planets, whether you do that economically or militarily. You're trying to develop various research different technologies. You're trying to get money. In this game, you actually have credits versus just using your cards as currency in the Race for the Galaxy version of the game. And so all that you're trying to do as quickly and as efficiently as you can, as there are a number of endgame timers that can bring the game to a rapid halt. And so you're trying to get those colonies under your control, get that technology developed, make some money, and do all of that within a very finite period of time. Just a fun game, and like I said, I enjoyed it too because it's just quicker, and I feel like you get to do a little bit more on your turns. New Frontiers, number 6. I'm going to give you a little break from the space games, but don't expect it to last for very long because my number 5 is Imperial Settlers Empires of the North. This is the second game in the Imperial Settlers lineup from Portal Games. In this game, you're going to control a unique faction. The base game comes with a number of factions like Vikings and Inuit tribes and some Scottish tribes, but you can also get a number of expansions that add things like the Romans and others, which I've had a lot of fun exploring. You're going to have a unique deck of cards in this game for your faction. You're going to be playing those cards to get resources, to get additional actions, and maybe be able to convert resources into other resources. One of the things that you're going to be collecting are axe tokens, and those tokens can be loaded onto ships and sent off to explore these distant lands. Some of these lands may provide you with just a quick boost of resources, but some of them you can actually pillage with those axes to become a expansion of your own settlement. And they may give you additional actions that you can take. They may give you additional conversions that you can utilize. There's a lot of engine building in this game, which is one reason why I enjoyed it so much. Now, I've played this at a wide number of players, and it really does work pretty well at all the player counts. But at 2 players especially, it's again just a very quick game. There is the ability of some interaction in this game. You can actually use those axe tokens to affect cards on your opponents, but you're going to want to utilize those so frequently for that travel to those distant lands that you're very, very rarely going to want to waste them to attack one of your fellow opponents. And so again, it plays a little bit more like a multiplayer solo game than the original Imperial Settlers, and so at 2 players it just becomes, again, a fairly quick, snappy experience. I've had a lot of fun with this. Again, I love the engine building mechanism in this game. I love how the factions feel unique, and you're trying to utilize their abilities very differently, playing out these cards to sort of expand your settlement, your civilization, giving yourself additional actions that you can then trigger off, trying to find just the right path through the different buildings that you have played out in front of you to get as most out of your civilization as you can. A very thinky experience, a fun experience, really nice artwork and good production. Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North, my number 5. Of course, we're heading back to space, but that's okay because this next game is a bit of an obscure title from Mr. Martin Wallace. This is Rocket Men, published by Phalanx Games. This is a deck building game at its core where players are building a deck of cards to then let them build a series of rockets onto a launch pad. And they'll be doing that to try and accomplish missions to some celestial bodies in our solar system, whether it be the orbit of Earth, the Moon, or the Mars. Those missions are going to, of course, give them points, but it will also provide some engine building mechanisms to the rest of your game. They may provide extra income for you. They may provide extra thrust to help you with future missions. They may even provide you with scientific tags, which are going to help you with future launches as well. The idea is that each of these missions to each of those different locations requires certain symbols, and you can play cards onto your rockets to provide those symbols, because when you actually attempt the launch, you have to use a push your luck mechanism to see if you can move along a track to that actual planet or moon that you're trying to head to. So you'll be flipping over cards to kind of help move along that track, but you can give yourself a head start by having some of these scientific tags either on your launch pad or provided by some of your previous missions that you've already accomplished. There is a racing element to this as well. You're all trying to go for the same missions. You may be incentivized to go to certain missions because of a end-game scoring card that you're given at the beginning of the game, but the first person to reach, or I should say accomplish each of these missions at these locations will get some extra points, and then of course, you're just racing to an overall score determined by the player count. I like the game at 2 specifically because it's a little quicker to set up. You've got to do a lot of finagling of different cards. You have different cards that go into this supply deck based on the player count. Again, it's a little quicker at 2, and I just kind of feel like you've got a little less competition trying to get the things done on your scoring card than if you had a lot of extra players sitting around the table. That might feel a little tongue-in-cheek, but again, it just makes the game a little quicker. And you've also got a little bit of extra opportunities to get some really good cards into your deck because there's less people just fighting for those cards. It's not a perfect game. In fact, I reviewed this on the channel a good number of years ago. You can kind of break the game a little bit if you just incentivize buying cards and wait until much later in the game to start launching your missions. You may be behind in score, but you'll eventually be able to rocket ahead of your competition because you've basically starved them of all those cards. I don't recommend playing that way. It's not as much fun, but it's something to kind of be mindful of. If you see your opponent doing that, you kind of need to try and keep up yourself. Other than that, a very, very fun game. There is also an expansion for this, which I have only played once, but it did add some other unique systems that I really did enjoy playing. Need to get this back to the table a bit more often. Rocket Men, my number 4. Hey, let's venture into space just one more time, if you don't mind, because this next game is The Last Command by Ty McDonald and Sentient Games. This is another deck-building game set in space. Yes, I know there's a little bit of a theme here, but I promise it's the last one. But in this game, you are in command of a capital ship, and you and your opponent, this is only a 2-player game, are involved in an epic broadsides duel to the death. You're actually going to be building 2 decks of cards in this game, as your ship has a number of systems, engineering, communications, and tactical, and you also have spots for crew members to work each of those systems. The crew members are going to provide power to those systems, maybe some extra abilities when they go into play. When you place the cards into the systems of that ship, they're going to consume that power, and they will give you effects that also last as long as that card is visible in that system. But most interestingly is at the end of each one of your turns, you're going to look for any synergies between the system cards and the crew that are installed in that system. Each of those system cards may give you extra abilities, extra actions like drawing extra cards, dealing extra damage, maybe repairing your ship based on the crew that are currently working in that system. Now, when you have to draw cards from either deck, and there aren't any, all of the cards in your ship of that requisite deck go away. So all of the crew kind of change out. They get discarded. All the system cards get discarded. And you have to sort of start all over again, trying to either restore those combos you had in place or, of course, find new ones. I've really had a lot of fun with this. The uniqueness of the combos that you can build with the systems and the crew member is always a ton of fun. It's always interesting what you can try and get into play to combat a mechanism that maybe your opponent is using against you. If they're going very damage heavy, you might want to try and get some extra repair abilities into play. There are also these malfunction cards that you can play that sort of chip away at a player's health from their own deck. But again, you can get some systems in play, you can get some combos in play that kind of ward those off or even throw that damage back at your opponent, which is always a ton of fun if you can pull that off. A game that I've just really enjoyed sinking my teeth into and coming up with some crazy wild combos to play against my opponent in The Last Command, my number 3. Okay, we're done with the space games, I promise. My number 2 on this list is a very recent acquisition. I've only gotten this just a few weeks ago, in fact, and I've had an absolute ton of fun playing Adulthood by Brotherwise Games. A game that I will admit, by the way, does not look that great on camera. But this is a tableau building game where you will be trying to simply live your best life. Each player will start with a board in front of them with a space for a career, for their involvement with the community, for leisure activities and wellness activities, as well as some actions on the bottom of that board that will help you get those and other cards into your hand. You're going to have a number of time tokens which you're going to use each turn to allocate your time to these various actions, whether that be your job, your community, leisure, wellness, or even maybe a significant other that you might be building a relationship with throughout this game. And you're going to be playing other cards in your tableau that may give you resources, they may give you traits, they may give you just unique experiences, and all of which is to try and develop your happiness and sort of build your impact throughout your life. And all of this is done with absolutely phenomenal, cartoonish, beautiful art from Tim Brierley. And I love some of the little pop culture social cues. There are pets that you can get through the newest expansion. You can appear on TV with Conan O'Brien. You can go running with Forrest Gump. All of this stuff is in this game, just delightfully tongue-in-cheek. And it builds this emergent story as you're playing. Certain things are going to happen to you. There are these life events that happen at certain points as you're scoring. You're going to trigger these life events, and it may be things like losing your job. It may be things like getting an inheritance from a lost family member. It may give you some negative scoring because, of course, it's reducing your happiness. But there's always a trade-off. There's always something that sort of, some good and bad, some push and pull that happens throughout these cards. And it is just absolutely delightful. I love the theming of this game. And it is, again, at 2, it's just a little quicker. The game can feel a little slow, especially in the first maybe third or so of gameplay. It does start to snowball, but maybe not quite as much as I would like it to personally. But the theme more than makes up for it. And of course, at 2 players, you're able to just get through it that much quicker and sort of build that life that maybe you've always wanted in my number 2, Adulthood. As we come into my number 1 game for 2 players to sit and enjoy together, you may have noticed by now that I have a big emphasis on theme. I really like a game that makes me feel like I'm doing the things that it tells us that we're doing. And I especially like a game where I can feel like I'm building something, creating something, sort of developing something. Maybe I start small and end up with a big tableau, a big deck, a big solar system or civilization that I control, any of the above. And I think one game that does that maybe better than all the rest is 10 Penny Parks by Thunderworks Games. This is a game where players are competing to build the most successful theme park. And you're going to be doing that using a worker placement system first, but also something of a polyomino placement game. Now, I'm not a huge fan of polyomino games because I feel like there's so much emphasis on trying to get things to fit together and trying to fill a board, trying to fill columns or cover certain symbols. There is some of that in here, but not nearly as much as those other games, because one big thing, for example, is that the tiles that you're placing in this game can never touch each other. So you're actually trying to space things out. Now, you're using this worker placement mechanism, as I mentioned, to maybe expand that park, actually clear trees that might be on this board in front of you. You might be just grabbing some extra money. You might be grabbing some small concession stands to put amongst your park. But mainly, you're going to be building these various amusements, a lot of which are going to give you points. Some of them may also generate some extra income for you from round to round. And again, all that is to try and build the most successful park. There are 3 tracks that you're sort of fighting against your opponent with. There is awe, there is joy, there is excitement. I think that's the 3. And whoever is furthest up on those tracks each round will get a certain bonus, which might be being first player in the next round, getting an extra worker to work with in the next round, or maybe even just grabbing some extra money. But perhaps one of my favorite mechanisms in this game is the advertising mechanism. At the end of each round, before you get any extra money, you can use any residual money from that round to advertise the rides that are in your park. Each of those amusements that you have built are going to give you a point bonus if you can spend the amount of money shown on them to generate those points. And so there's a lot of this push and pull between how quickly do I expand my park and how much money do I sort of hold back to be able to advertise those rides. And again, it just makes this theme very immersive. You feel like you're trying to very carefully build this park. You're trying to keep it pretty, maybe by keeping these trees in place. You have various achievements that you can work towards, again, to sort of give yourself some extra in-game scoring. There is a new expansion for this that is coming out quite soon. It'll be coming to crowdfunding, I think, a little later on here in 2025. And one of them is called Innovation, which adds a whole new track system that you're working with. It increases the scoring potential of this game and gives you some other unique strategies to work towards. I've already gotten to play that. You'll actually see a preview video of that coming out here on the channel a little later on this year. Had quite a lot of fun with that already. A delightful game, really nice table presence, some unique systems in play. 10 Penny Parks, my number 1. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed this list. Don't forget to go and check out the video with my wife and I about gaming for couples. We had a lot of fun putting that together, and there is a top 10 on that video as well, which is entirely unique from everything that you've seen here. So hopefully go and check that out and let me know what you think. Let me know your favorite 2-player game as well in the comments, and I might even cover those later on in an episode of the weekly Ratchet here on the channel, which airs every week, talking about games that I've acquired, games that I have played in the past week. So again, thanks for watching, folks. I look forward to hearing from you and chatting with you again soon. Cheers.